Why are there still monkeys if we evolved from them? This question arises from a fundamental misunderstanding of human evolution. Some people may wonder that if we evolved from monkeys, why do they still exist in the world today? The answer, however, is not a linear transition from chimpanzees to humans. A deeper understanding of how evolution works will help us understand that we and apes have a common ancestor, and that evolution is not a straight line, but is essentially a network of interactions, complex work, diversity, and change. This explains why both we and monkeys still exist together. Not because we evolved from monkeys, but because we have a common evolutionary relationship with them. Like the relationship between members of a large evolutionary family. A remarkable analogy for further understanding this can be found in exploring the peculiar family tree of humanity. On this family tree, we see not only a close connection between modern humans and other apes, but also a close connection between them and chimpanzees, such as Neanderthals and Denisovans. In a broader sense, we became cousins. And if we look further, we can see that our common ancestor, the last human species, may have been a combination of Neanderthals and Denisovans. These people serve as our grandparents, the origins of our human lineage. However, although this analogy may seem obvious, the reality is much more complex. This requires us to look further into the past, about 6 to 7 million years ago, when our last common ancestor broke with the Neanderthal and Denisovan lineages, thereby becoming the parents of all modern humans and related lineages. Therefore, this similarity is not limited to genetic expression, but also extends to cultural, social, and evolutionary aspects of humanity. We are the result of a complex reunion, a magical and enriching genetic journey. Not us, but chimpanzees and other apes are individuals with distinct ancestors. These are certain unique lineages with separate evolutionary journeys, not directly related to humans. The question of why chimpanzees and other apes have not evolved as we have, as we see gorillas and orangutans evolve, is a concern that is not easily answered. All of these species have fossil relatives, but chimpanzee fossils are extremely rare. Even with a few chimpanzee fossils, we cannot clearly determine their evolution. It's just part of a larger story. A genetic study published in 2010 revealed that chimpanzee ancestors diverged from their common ancestor 930,000 years ago, and that the ancestors of these three subspecies lived apart for 160,000 years before that. The differences between central chimpanzees and eastern chimpanzees began to emerge only 93,000 years ago, before modern humans began to exist about 300,000 years ago. So it can be said that chimpanzees did not evolve in the way that humans did, and that it is incorrect to say that they were wrong in their evolution. However, for further evidence and insight into this evolutionary process, we can turn to some of the other extant apes, especially those closely related to known species. No, extinction emphasize. In 2007, a remarkable discovery was made by researchers when they discovered 9 ancient teeth dating back to about 8 million years ago. These teeth do not belong to modern gorilla species, but were determined to belong to another gorilla species called Coropithecus abyssinian. Although there is not enough evidence to determine exactly where this species lived, researchers believe it may have been an ancestor of modern gorillas or another primitive gorilla species. Evidence from these fossils shows that the ancestors of gorillas or related species were diverse and distinct. This proves that gorillas are not simply a homogeneous group, but have undergone diverse evolution and development. The split between humans and gorillas occurred more than 8 million years ago, a very distant point in our evolutionary history. For orangutans, there is no shortage of evidence for fossil ancestors. In fact, a significant number of orangutan species have been recorded in the fossil record. with 3 extant members belonging to the Pongane family. This subfamily is very diverse and includes many extinct species, including Pithecus, Luffingpithecus, Eosimias, and Cythopithecus. These species are close relatives of modern orangutans, demonstrating the species development and evolution over millions of years. Among the closest members of modern orangutans is Coropithecus, which lived in Thailand 3 to 7 million years ago. This subfamily also contains one of the largest known orangutan species, the Gigantopithecus. With this evidence, there is no doubt that orangutans have undergone evolution and development over a period of more than 10 million years. A common question that many people ask is, why don't all apes evolve like humans? However, this question actually reflects a misconception and only a limited understanding of the evolutionary process. Evolution is not a process with a single goal, not even specific instructions unless imposed by external environmental factors. There is no reason that all apes will or should evolve in the same way as humans. Each species develops and evolves in its own way, reflecting adaptations to its specific habitat and evolutionary pressures. Humans chose a risky evolutionary path, becoming an apex predator that relied on hunting and food gathering skills. However, if environmental conditions had changed or events had played out differently, we might have gone extinct like so many of our hominin relatives. Our development is not inevitable but the product of a combination of environmental conditions, adaptability, and opportunity. Therefore, the question of why apes did not evolve like humans is not only inaccurate, but also a limited view of the complexity and diversity of the evolutionary process. Each species has its own evolutionary journey, and diversity in nature is something that needs to be respected and understood. In conditions of food shortage, starvation is a big risk when you can only eat plants. However, life in primitive times where hunting became an indispensable part of survival opened up opportunities for human nutritional and spiritual development. The varied and nutrient-rich diet provided by hunting caused our brains to grow much larger. The brain, an organ that requires about 20% of our energy, has become more energy-rich thanks to food. However, to get this benefit, people must become smarter in hunting. We had to develop complex hunting tools and techniques to deal with prey and coordinate our hunts. This has created evolutionary pressure for us to become smarter and more astute in using our minds and skills to gather food. Compared to humans, chimpanzees mainly eat fruits and plants. They often hunt like monkeys, and this requires intelligence. This may explain why chimpanzees are often considered intelligent animals. Their intelligence may be the result of evolutionary development to adapt to their living environment and the abundance of food they consume. While chimpanzees and gorillas may be known to be intelligent animals, their brains are still relatively small in size compared to human brains. In their daily lives, having a larger brain does not necessarily bring significant benefits, especially when they have to consume a lot of energy to maintain daily activities. Nevertheless, chimpanzees remain dominant in their habitat, as demonstrated by their long-term survival. In the evolutionary process, while humans have a larger brain, the fact that chimpanzees and gorillas still exist while Neanderthals, Denisovans, and many other relatives are no longer on Earth is something to ponder. The survival and success of chimpanzees and gorillas in their habitats may reflect adaptation to the environment. Even though they have smaller brains, they are still capable of using appropriate life skills and strategies to survive and adapt in harsh conditions. This also shows that brain size is not the only factor that determines the survival and success of a species. Instead, flexibility, adaptation, and the ability to use survival skills are more important factors in shaping the fate of a species in its evolution and continued existence on the planet. There is not enough pressure to make them leave their comfortable and unique position in their Environment, which is inevitable, our distant ancestors actually had many similarities with chimpanzees. Arboreal primates, until about 4 to 5 million years ago, when humans began to develop the ability to walk on two legs. One of the first advances in human evolution that distinguished us from our chimpanzee relatives was the ability to walk on two legs, although this was not a quick transition for more than 3 million years. Our ancestors lived in open forest environments where we could walk on two legs but still lived in trees. The step hypothesis is considered a popular explanation for why humans walk on two legs, according to this hypothesis. As habitats changed and forests began to grow denser, walking on steppe land would become more conducive to movement and gathering food. Therefore, humans developed the ability to walk on two legs to adapt to this new environment. However, this hypothesis is only part of the story. Human evolution is a complex process involving many different factors such as genetic variation, environmental pressures, and species-specific adaptations. The transition from living in trees to walking on two legs was part of a long evolutionary process, and human success in adapting and thriving in new environments laid the foundations for evolution. This superiority of humanity, the explanation lies in the fact that our environment has become drier and there is less vegetation for us to live on. This forced our ancestors to adapt to the steppe environment. This theory has faced much criticism recently. Now, suppose that our ancestors, including some early Australopithecus, lived in environments with lots of forest as well as more open grassy areas. That's why our ancestors walked on two legs but also lived in trees for so long. Eventually, Australopithecus became more bipedal and our ancestors became completely terrestrial, leaving trees behind, meaning there was nowhere to hide from predators who couldn't climb. This has created an even greater evolutionary pressure on us. So why do chimpanzees give up their dominance in the trees only to be eaten by lions? That's exactly why they retain similar morphology to us and their ancestors, the gorillas. Chimpanzees live interesting lives but are one step more evolved than us. They became larger and more fearsome creatures capable of defending themselves. Their only predator is the leopard. This is because they do not live alongside African predators such as hyenas and lions. There is an obvious reason why gorillas cannot completely abandon life in the trees even though their habitat is constantly changing. This is because although they can move between trees and the ground, life in trees still gives them more safety and convenience. In trees, they can avoid predators and other threats more easily and also more easily find food from fruit and leafy sources. Besides, adapting to the savanna environment is not easy and unreasonable for some gorilla species. While this environment can provide diverse food sources, it also brings great risks and evolutionary pressures to them. Having to compete with other species in open environments is also a big challenge, and not all gorilla species can fully adapt to this. It is also important to note that keeping part of their lives in trees also helps gorillas be closer to their natural environment and more flexible in finding food and avoiding threats. This flexibility can help them create a balanced life strategy between life in trees and on the ground, meeting their survival needs and ensuring their safety. Ultimately, evolution is not only about eliminating everything unnecessary, but also about maintaining a balance between different elements to ensure the survival and development of a species. This also applies to gorillas as they continue to grow and adapt to new environments without completely leaving their life in the trees behind. These monkeys try their best to put themselves at risk of being hunted. The answer is that they are not real. The mystery is why our ancestors did this. This is a very interesting question, but takes a long time to answer, not something we can cover briefly in a video. It's a complex combination of our environment and food sources. Another thing I want to emphasize about evolution is that we are not the end product of it, humans like to think they are the best, and this is often expressed in religions, especially anthropocentrism. But the reality is that we are just part of a natural evolutionary process. We are not the most perfect species. For example, horseshoe crabs have been around for 445 million years. And ants are among the most successful animals, having the largest brains relative to body mass. Even having a big brain is not necessarily good. For example, sea urchins do not have a central nervous system, but they still survive and grow. In our case, our brain has been used to its maximum and driven us towards domination. Evolution is a cruel and natural process with no specific goal. But after billions of years, it created an organism capable of understanding and grasping its process. If you like this video, don't forget to follow our evolution content. Please subscribe to the channel and press the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. Goodbye and see you again.